You're watching All Angles on eNCA. Good afternoon. It's good to have you with us. Well, it's really tough times, trying times in South Africa. There are no words, there are no adjectives that truly capture the situation that we are going through. And we are hoping that with the visuals that we are showing you, you are able to make up your own mind in as far as how precarious the moment is, but also the decision makers, right? The question of what now, what next, what needs to happen. The leaders in our society, the people that need to be talking to various constituencies that they represent, but also assessing the impact of what has happened, the disruption in our economy, the loss of life. My goodness, what a difficult time to be alive in South Africa at the moment. Well, the ongoing unrest and looting in parts of the country is making headlines around the world. Let's unpack the image this portrays and its effect on brand South Africa. I'm joined now by brand reputation management advisor, that's Solly Moeng. Solly, I think it goes without saying that given the whole brand promise of South Africa, a few years ago we used to say alive with possibility. If you are sitting outside of South Africa and you're wondering about this country in the southern tip of the African continent, its systems of governance, its adherence to its own laws and the rule of law, etc., this is not pleasing to see at all.
No, it's not. I don't know, your voice kept going and coming to Thulasizwe, but it's not good for South Africa. It's not good for South Africa in the eyes of Africa. A lot of Africa looks at South Africa as a leader. Despite all the things that have happened in this country over the years, people still look at us as the democratic hope for Africa, where we have institutions and institutions can do what they must, as they have in arresting former President Jacob Zuma recently. But when we start faltering like this, people get worried. But if South Africa can fail, anybody can fail. In the same way that the world had been looking at America as a democratic hope until Donald Trump arrived and the attack on the Capitol happened, people started saying, well, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. So we're not just a leader for South Africa, we're a leader for Africa, we're a leader for the world. People are looking at South Africa as still as the South Africa of Mandela that cannot do these kind of things wrong. So it's important that at some point the government of the day gets to a point where it gets the situation under control. And right now we're not there. We seem to be very far from there.
I mean, a short while ago, earlier on this morning, we saw communication from Botswana advising Botswana to avoid any unnecessary travel to South Africa, and those Botswana who are already in South Africa to take precaution and avoid moving around inside the country while they're here. One imagines that similar advisories are being crafted in various parts of the world. But it's not only about tourists, but it's also about investment, is it not? Because I imagine that when you're seeing factories on fire, and you're seeing warehouses being looted on a grand scale, as an investor sitting, I don't know, somewhere else, let's say in Accra in Ghana, and you were thinking perhaps South Africa could be my next area of expansion, this is likely to make you think twice.
Yeah, definitely. Look, all of us who are connected professionally, personally with people from around the world, and most of us would have been getting messages from people wanting to know what is going on in South Africa. Why are you guys doing this? What happened for you to get to where you are at today? So it is worrisome. It's worrisome. Investors, of course, people who want to make long-term investment decisions on South Africa would also be asking the same questions. You know, a few months ago, really, we worried about political and economic policy stability. Now we have political unrest. And actually the truth of the matter is that the Africa report that came out a few months ago did state possible political unrest as one of the issues that the world was worried about. Now it's come to fruition. Now let's see how long it takes. The key is that government needs to take this into control as soon as possible, because if it becomes protracted, it's going to be really hard for government to take to control it and to assure the world that actually we can go back to normalcy.
In fact, you take me to my next point, Solly, because I was going to ask you, how do we claw back that brand credibility? Because I do recall a few days ago, before all of this started exploding in the way that it has, at the point at which former President Jacob Zuma was taken in by the police and taken to Escort correctional facility, there was a narrative that was saying that, you know, this could be good for brand South Africa. It could be saying that the rule of law, we have fidelity to to the values that we subscribe to, and this whole mantra of all are equal before the law and the rule of law holds and institutions do what they are supposed to do. But it now contrasts sharply with what we are seeing now. Where does clawing back brand credibility start?
I think it doesn't help, Thulasizwe, that the governing African National Congress is divided on this matter. It's been divided, it's been factionalized for years. So even within the governing African National Congress, you still have people who are not sure where they stand, whether they stand on the side of the law with the president supposedly, or on the side of the faction that has coalesced around Jacob Zuma. We've seen the premier of KZN, who usually seems to be jumping from one side to the other, saying things that are clearly not correct, shouldn't happen in terms of the law. So the fact that the African National Congress is not able to speak in one voice, both internally and externally, also creates more problems for the world, for South Africa, for everybody. So it's really important that the government is able to say, this is the law and this is where it goes, and everybody else is an outlaw. But do you have people in the ANC who are saying to the president different things, or who are murmuring, who are whispering things in the dark, but those things end up coming out? So the mixed messages that are being sent out by those who are supposed to be in control of the situation are not helpful.
Lastly, Soli, let me ask you this. President Cyril Ramaphosa, as perhaps a brand ambassador of Brand South Africa, what do you think of his performance in that role of leadership in a time of crisis, communicating during that period of crisis, decision-making, timely decision-making, and communicating your decisions clearly, being firm, but while at the same time being empathetic? Yeah. All of those things, pull them together for me, Soli.
Look, President Ramaphosa has consistently been accused of not having backbone, not being a strong leader, not being assertive enough, not leading from the front in terms of values. And it's true. All those things, accusations are true. Many things have happened within the ANC, even after he became president, when he could have stood up and said, no, stop it, that's not allowed, that person must be out. He's never done that. So first of all, he's not a very strong leader. Secondly, he gets undermined in his own party, and that's a big problem. The big problem is that he gets undermined in his own party. If you run a company, Thulasizwe, and you go to the world, say we are the best employer, we take care of our own people, and then your own employees go out and say that's not true, that's not what we see happen in the business, then your whole message collapses. And this is what's happening with South Africa. So the commander-in-chief, the CEO of South Africa Incorporated, who is the president, is not able to speak in one voice that's clear, that doesn't get undermined within his own party. And this is it's a big problem.
Yeah, Soli, let me share with you that I sort of have been floating this idea with other experts in the area that you are in communications and brand management and leadership, that my own thinking would have been that perhaps part of the message from the president would have been to the SANDF and the security cluster that when I speak that, by 12 midday tomorrow, I want you to have Pietermaritzburg fully under control, order restored. I will be walking the streets of Pietermaritzburg to reassure South Africans that government is winning back the streets. I don't know, and one person I think I can mention, Makosini Mgejwa, didn't really share the enthusiasm that I had for this particular idea, that he says there are a lot of pitfalls politically, that it can backfire horribly. Yeah. And as I speak to you, Soli, I just saw David Makura doing exactly what I was talking about. He's out and about in the south of Johannesburg inspecting the damage, and his briefing is being done outside as opposed to a media briefing room. What do you think? Should the president be more, quote-unquote, on the ground?
Well, he should be both. I think he should be, first of all, his message should not be ambiguous. It shouldn't be like trying. Sometimes when the president speaks, it's almost like he's trying to be loved by people. But these are extraordinary times. Even during last year, he would make a speech and say, this is what's going to happen with lockdown restrictions. The next day, the minister, Nkosazana Zuma, would come in and say something else, or other ministers would come in and do something else. The president should be clear. This is, now I'm calling the shots. This is, of course, we're a democracy. It's not a dictatorship. dictator. But he must be very clear and firm, assertive in the messages he says. And when he goes out there, of course, he should be present. He should be accessible. He should show that he does care for the poorest of the poor, for all the people of South Africa, really, not just the poorest of the poor. But the thing is, he must not be ambiguous, and he must not be contradicted by his own people. It must be clear that the chief has spoken, and this is how it's going to run. But sometimes it's not. It seems like he's really trying to be loved by everybody, and this is not working, especially in such extraordinary times.
Yeah, sorry, look, I don't purport to know much about branding and the area, or your area of expertise, and certainly I don't even purport to know much about leadership. I was just thinking that perhaps, finger wagging. I know that in terms of body language, we always associate leaders who are finger wagging with dictatorial style of leadership. You think P.W. Porter, etc. But I don't know, Soli. I think there's a certain degree where you say, you will stop what you are doing now. We are in control of the state, and you will stop, and you will stop now. But I don't know.
Well, there's a way to do it. When Mandela was very good at that. When Christiani was killed and the whole country was in trouble, there was almost going to be another civil war, Mandela stood up and he firmly said, stop it. When he went to KZN, he said, please put your guns down. This is no time for that. When people wanted to get rid of the Springbok emblem, Mandela said, no, you can't do that. So there's a way. We see when there's already trust in you as a leader, you can get away with a lot of things. But when there's already a weak foundation of you as a leader, then it becomes questionable all the time. So you have to be a leader, and it's a pity that President Ramaphosa didn't come in there as that kind of man who's straight, who's forward, who is loving, but who's also able to be stern. And people can believe him. When he says, I'm not happy with that, they believe him. When he says, I'm playful, they can believe him. But he is not that kind of leader. That is, Mandela was able to be that kind of leader, who was able to say, I'm going to have coffee with Pacific Road. People say, are you crazy? You can't do that. He said, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And let me tell you why it's important to do that. That's leadership. So leadership comes with credibility. If people cannot believe you on the most basic of things, you struggle on the hardest of things.
All right, so Moeng, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Again, I do want to give that disclaimer that I'm no expert in some of these matters. I reflect on them as ordinary South Africans do, and sometimes I form a view, which is the view that I have formed, that certainly I would have been more stern in my coding of some of that language, and that's just me. You are free to disagree with me.